Today we're going to ride on a carrot. No, not this one. This one. The 71623 tram car was built by the Ustkatov car manufacturing plant, one of the biggest tram manufacturers in Russia in the late 2000s. It was designed to be a simple, reliable single-car tram, built to survive heavy daily use and brutal Russian winters. Thanks to its bright orange factory paint, Muscovites quickly called it the Morkovka, or as it's known in English, the carrot. And for years it's run along Moscow streets, but now only a few are left. Now, despite their relatively young age, these are the last old trams left on the Moscow tram network. And that's because the Department for Transport is currently going through a massive program to rejuvenate the Moscow tramway. They're reopening old and forgotten lines, building completely new ones, bringing in brand new trams like the one passing me there, and refurbishing all of the tram stops. So that means that the old carrots are just left on routes 32 and 38. And within a month or two, they're all going to be gone. So if you want to see one, then now's the time. Slight problem, the turning circle where the tram changes direction at the end of the line is behind me, and the station is before me. So we have to run to catch the tram. Let's see if we can make it. Should be okay. Hopefully he's going to wait for me. Right, let's jump on and see our first impressions. Oh. Wow, this is lovely.
38. До остановки Черемушки. Приятной поездки. Следующая остановка метро Авиамоторная. Выход КЦД Авиамоторная. Третий диаметр.
Well, my first impressions of the tram are quite nice, to be fair. It's nice and bright and open, and it's got a nice style of the transitional period between the 1990s and the 2000s. Now, the first thing I need to do before I show you anything else is pay my fare, because the fine here is about £50. Now, in most cities in Russia, the driver will actually take your payment via cash or card. But here in Moscow, they got rid of that idea back in the 2010s. So you either have to use a Troika card, which is similar to your MTA card in New York or your Oyster card in London, or a bank card. And today, I'm going to be using my special Troika card, which was specially designed for the 125th anniversary of Moscow's tramways. Now, despite the fact that I have a monthly ticket on this Troika card, if I wanted to just pay for a single ticket, it would only cost me about 75 pence. So let me tell you a little bit about the route. We're currently travelling on route number 38, from the House of Culture compressor all the way down to Cheromishky in the south of Moscow. And the big motorway that we are currently running alongside now is known as Chaussée Enthusiastov, and that's the main road that takes you out from the centre of Moscow out towards the east.
По требованию места инвалидам, пожилым людям, пассажирам с детьми и беременным женщинам.
So as I mentioned about the Department for Transport rebuilding some of those old and forgotten tram routes in Moscow, we're now currently riding on one of them, and it stretches from Metro Aviamotorная all the way down to Metro Proletarskaya. And there's a second route which is just going along Chaussée Enthusiastov behind me, which takes you all the way down to Kursky Vokzal. And this part of the tram route that was old and forgotten for many years was rebuilt and reopened back in 2025. You'll also notice, which is very common in Eastern Europe, is that there are tram stops in the middle of the road, and the passengers need to get off and walk across the live road to be able to get to the pavement. Now, there is a sign right behind me, this box here, the black one, and that will say, "Stop, be careful, passengers," and it is the rules of the traffic here to stop your car behind the tram, allow people to get on and off and to cross the road safely, and once the tram moves, it'll say thank you, or spasibo in Russian, and then you can carry on driving as well. The design of the tram is quite innovative. Whereas all of the old Soviet high-floor trams were completely high-floor, meaning there was a huge step to get on and off the tram at each stop, these trams are split level. The high floor covers the wheel sets, and the low floor is in between the wheel sets where the equipment isn't needed that much to run the tram. which means it's easier for those of reduced mobility and those with luggage to board and alight the tram. And if we go and have a look at the lower floor section of the tram, you will find a dedicated space for disabled passengers and double doors to allow boarding for wheelchairs and those with luggage. We're just leaving Danilskaya Ulica and we're going to cross the Moscow River over the Spassky Bridge. And if you look out the window very carefully, you should be able to see one of Stalin's 7 sisters and the Kremlin. As the tram was built back in the 2000s, there was no air conditioning back on public transport then, really. If you wanted some air conditioning in the hot summer heat, all you need to do, open the window and let the breeze cool you off. I have to say, I find it pretty weird how there's safety critical equipment just lying around on the floor. I know that safety standards in Eastern Europe aren't as strict as those in the West. Looking at it, it seems a bit heavy to pick up, and those women tram drivers of the Soviet Union are accredited their profession for moving them in the first place. Most of the tram drivers in the Soviet Union were women, and that was because women were not allowed to work on the Moscow metro as train drivers. It was declared too bad for their health. So traditionally, men drove the metros and women drove the trams. However, we're now in the 21st century. There are 3 lines on the metro where women can drive, and there are now more and more male tram drivers operating about the city. We just have to wait for the car to move. Now, the funny thing about public transport is that the things that you see every day become very nostalgic when they're finally gone. And with every splash of orange that gets taken away from Moscow streets, the city just becomes that little bit grayer. But it's not the end of the life for these carrot trams. They're going to get sent to cities like Smolensk and Kolomna as hand-me-downs. And you wonder why Russians say Moscow is not Russia.
Дубининская улица, дом 57. Следующая остановка – Первый Павловский переулок. Для вашей безопасности держитесь за поручни. В середине вагона находятся ступеньки.
The next stop is Paveletsky Railway Terminal, so we're going to get off and say a final goodbye to the carrots. Right, let's cross the street and I'll show you one final departure. Behind me is Paveletsky Railway Terminal. The trains that go from this station connect Moscow with the Volga regions and the southern regions of Russia. And we are going to walk up to the street at the end of the road and we are going to see just what is replacing the carrot trams. This is the first time I've seen grass in Moscow since autumn. We've had a record amount of snow over this winter, with it going up to about my waist, and I'm about 6 feet, which is about 187 centimeters if I can change that correctly. So it's been a lot, and I gotta say it is absolutely fantastic to have some sun and some grass for the first time this year. Now, the tram junction behind me is where the Route 38 continues down towards Tulske and Cheromishki. However, we are going to be having a look at the replacement for the carrots, which is going to be departing from the platform ahead of me, working on the Route T1 up towards Chisti Prudy and towards Park Sokolniki. Now, the replacement for the carrot trams are these, the Levionik 71911 series. These trams are quieter, fully low floor, and much more comfortable for passengers. However, the main difference is that these trams can run on battery power. Now, 2 new tram routes have opened in Moscow over the past year. parts of which are without an overhead power cable. So it is absolutely necessary for trams in Moscow to be able to run on battery power. Now it's out with the old and in with the new, and part of that is saying goodbye to things that have been part of everyday life and have kept the city moving for years. That's the end of the video for today, so please feel free to like, subscribe and press the bell button. And as for this prop, well, it's absolutely criminal to waste food in Russia, so it'll be coming home with me to be put into a borscht.